All right, Hunter, it looks like you and I for today.
Yep. But I'm excited to kind of go through the different topics, and looks like you got a show and tell for us.
Yes, is that still showing on the screen?
Yeah, I'm still
Okay.
showing up good.
I'm a little slow on technology. So this is a new AI real estate agent. This brokerage in Portugal is they did 100 million in sales with this artificial intelligence real estate agent. So we're going to give it a test go and try to buy some real estate in Portugal. Okay, so Rachel is the agent. Enable the camera so the agent can see you.
Hmm.
It worked a minute ago.
Maybe try exiting it out once more, Craig. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, just see if you can kind of go back.
Reboot it.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. That should hopefully work.
Hi there, I'm Rachel, a real estate expert from Porta de Frente. Ready to start?
I am.
Great. Which city are you interested in? You can choose from popular options like Lisbon or Cascais, or let me know if you have another city in mind.
I'm looking for a two-bedroom apartment in Cascais.
Thank you. What is your budget for the apartment?
I'm moving from the United States. I don't know how much an apartment in Cascais would cost.
A typical price for a two-bedroom apartment in Cascais can range from around 300,000 to 600,000 euros, depending on the location and amenities. Now, could you please provide your budget?
I would like to look between 400 and 500 euros.
It seems like there might be a misunderstanding. The budget you provided seems to be in euros, but it may not be sufficient for purchasing an apartment in Cascais. Could you please confirm if you meant 400 to 500,000 euros?
400 to 500,000 euros.
Thank you for clarifying. Now let me find the right apartment for you in Cascais with two bedrooms and a budget of 400,000 to 500,000 euros. I found a great apartment for you. It's a two-bedroom property located in Arneiro, Cascais, priced at 435,000 euros. The apartment features two bathrooms and has a total area of 131 square meters. It includes a balcony and a lift, making it quite convenient. Would you like to do a virtual tour of this property? If so, which space would you like to see first?
Let's start in the kitchen.
The kitchen is a wonderful space, designed for both functionality and comfort. It features modern appliances and ample storage, making it perfect for cooking and entertaining. You'll appreciate the layout that allows for easy movement while preparing meals. Now, what would you like to see next in the apartment?
What does the living room look like?
The living room is spacious and inviting, perfect for relaxation and gatherings. It features large windows that allow natural light to flood the space, creating a warm and welcoming atmosphere. The design is modern, with plenty of room for comfortable seating and entertainment options. Now, what would you like to see next in the apartment?
Is there a bedroom on the main floor?
Yes, there is a bedroom on the main floor. This bedroom is well sized and designed for comfort, featuring ample closet space and large windows that provide a lovely view. It's a perfect retreat for rest and relaxation. Would you like to see this bedroom now?
Yes.
Here's the first bedroom. It offers a cozy atmosphere with plenty of natural light, making it a perfect space for rest. The design is modern, and it includes sufficient storage for your belongings. Now, what would you like to see next in the apartment?
Um, what is there a deck or a porch?
While this apartment does not feature a deck or porch, it does have a lovely balcony that provides a nice outdoor space to enjoy fresh air and views. It's a great spot for relaxing or having a morning coffee. Would you like to see the second bedroom next?
Yes, please.
Here's the second bedroom. Similar to the first, it is spacious and well lit, providing a comfortable environment. It also features ample closet space, making it ideal for your needs. Now, what would you like to see next in the apartment?
What does the area look like? Can you show me the city?
Well, I can't show you the city directly. I can tell you that Cascais is a beautiful coastal town, known for its stunning beaches, vibrant marina, and charming historic center. The area is filled with cafes, restaurants, and shops, making it a lively place to live. Would you like to see the bathrooms next?
No, thanks. Do you have an
That's perfectly
apartment?
fine. If you have any other questions about the apartment, or if there's anything else you'd like to know about Cascais, feel free to ask. Would you like to share your email address so I can send you more information?
Not at this time. Thank you. Oh, she's good at closing for the sale too.
I
Wow, that is really impressive, Craig. I have to say. I mean, I can see why that AI chatbot would have sold 100 million. I mean, it's
Yes. It still seems to have kinks in it. Granted, I don't know their lingo, you know. They didn't like porch or deck, but balcony was okay.
Mhm. Uh,
Um,
did you ever watch the show on HGTV? It was called House Hunters International.
no.
It was a kind of a cool show where they would go around to these cities internationally, Lisbon, being one of them, or whatever this town was called, and they would show little apartments, and it always kind of looked like that, and it just reminded me a lot of agents who would go through and tour those homes for prospective buyers. So, but yeah, I could definitely see this being a huge benefit. Um, I think I think less and less buyers nowadays probably need to see, touch, and feel, the actual real estate, before making a decision. So I think this could really be impactful for the future.
Okay. Now I'm gonna try to stop sharing. How do I do that now?
Should be in the top part of your screen. You might have to hover over it, and then there should be a red button.
Stop share. There we go. Okay. Are we back to normal now?
Yep, we're back to normal. So
All right. No, I lost you in all the windows here. Here we go. Okay, so that is once the kinks get worked out of that, I think what we could do is put my face on there or your face on there with your voice or my voice. And we could probably interchange our voices too. And so it's like you and I, they're 24/7 to answer all their questions. And then Jason Hartman, I don't know if you ever listened to his stuff.
no, I don't.
Okay, so he does YouTube channels and everything else, but he built an AI agent for himself. So you can go in there and all this, he'll ask him any real estate question, the AI version of Jason, and it'll search all his previous content and it'll answer your real estate question in his voice and in his face based on all his previous videos.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
So he's now duplicated himself working 24/7 times whatever, how many people ever log on, times 1,000, and then he can be off doing whatever he wants to do.
Yeah, that's
Productivity.
smart move. How do you replicate yourself? Cut down your own time and just replicate. So,
Yep. So how do we build our content? He's been doing it for years, so he's got a leg up. So content is king.
oh, it is, it is. No, and that's why you and I are talking today. I mean, that's why I'm making, content on my YouTube channel that partly is focused on the agent side of it, partly is focused on the investor side, and I'm,
Yep.
still trying to figure out, which route does content stick with. So,
Well, I don't know if it sticks with any route. If AI can just pull that data and recreate it, so I mean, you could feed it with make it my image and my voice and use call it Minnesota Revisor statutes, right? It's all the real estate law code and everything you need to know. And I'll throw in a bunch of city codes in there as well. Ask me any question, and it'll be me, an AI that and instantaneously searches all the legal documents, all the code, and answers a question.
yeah, that's
I mean, that might be a little liability danger, but you're giving it good content, so you should get fairly good answers.
sure. But if it's attached to your, your property website, for example, there's probably something in the privacy policy or the disclaimer that says, hey, nothing on here is, stated as fact, and that probably gets you off the hook if you're, trying
Yeah.
to. But I just think that's such a unique and creative tool to, market and sell properties, especially with all the virtual tours that are happening nowadays, where somebody does like a Matterport or a different type of camera system, they can do a 3D tour and turn that into a virtual.
So I think we noticed that that video got kind of like spotty and it kind of stopped and say, here's the bedroom. And then here's the second bedroom. It was the same video. So I'm wondering if they're having trouble with compressing all that data in real time.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly a lot of data, to hold. I mean, I don't even know how many gigabytes of data one 3D tour is just on one property, but you think of how many, cities might have thousands or tens of thousands of active homes on the market, that they
Yeah.
video tour for, or if nothing else, at least pictures. But, seems like a video tour is kind of how that AI is working off of.
Okay, so that takes it and let's say you and I do it and let's say we're carrying four listings. Well, that doesn't do the consumer much, right? No, let's say our broker does it and it's going to get 10%, 20% of the marketplace. That still really doesn't help it. Can this AI agent do other people's listings through IDX?
Yeah, that's good.
Now, or what kind of MLS rules are we gonna run into on that one?
Yeah. Well, and it gets tricky if you're an agent in a state like South Carolina where I am. I have four different MLSs just in my area that I cover. I mean, technically there's really two that I use. The other two I don't use as much, but you have two different MLSs or potentially three or four. You got every one of them has different rules and ways that they want you to advertise listings. We talked about clear cooperation a couple weeks back, and I know you wanted to talk about that again this week with Zillow, but
Yep.
it's like, how does clear cooperation work into all of that, as far as syndications and
It's a
um,
brave new world.
it is. It
So,
is.
do you want to segue into my thoughts on the Zillow Clear Cooperation issue?
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me kind of, what, when you first saw the headline, like what was the first thought that popped into your mind?
You bunch of hypocrites. Okay, so Zillow started out and they kind of competed with the realtor in a way, right? So they were getting in between the consumer and the agent. And I believe originally they weren't IDX. They were scraping the data. So they were just sucking the data off other IDX sites and then just posting it on there. And then it was actually I got a story to tell you later, but I ended up posting a blog back in God, was it 2009 and called them out on it. And I got a call from their CEO and their attorney. And then I got a call from my broker to come down to the office. I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna get fired. And my blog post went viral. Like I had like, 100 readers or subscribers, and I was into the 20, 30,000 hits, and it went nuts. But anyhow, they started linking after that. Our broker pulled away from putting their data out there, but their broker never gave them any of their data. So that they never answered where they got their data. But later they became a broker themselves. So then they suck in the IDX data from the MLS. So they're a real estate broker for the most part, not in all markets, but so Zillow came out and did a coming soon. Okay. So then that created an issue because you could list it on there as coming soon, and then you could sell it before any other agents had an opportunity to get to it. So then back in 2000, what was it, 2010, maybe 2015, the Realtors Association said, okay, we're going to do clear cooperation with all the MLSs. So you can do coming soon. That's fine. You can actively market it, but you can't show it within your own broker. It's once you advertise it, you can't give your broker a competitive advantage and not let other brokers show it. So that's called clear cooperation. If you put it out there, no showings by anybody until everybody can see it, just to keep the marketplace fair. Well, then we get the lawsuit about the commissions, right? And then we get a couple brokers, shoot, what's the name of them? You're with EXP, right? Yeah. Did I lose you?
Oh, I'm still
No,
here.
okay. It's I can't think of the name of the other brokerage. It's a new one. So they're trying to do private listings. So they want to get listings and they want to sell it within their own brokerage and not offer it to other companies. So then what does that do? The National Association of Realtors has to make a decision and say, do we get rid of clear cooperation? And then the big push is to bust the realtor model because we make way too much money, right? So the whole commission structure got tanked. So now NAR is on the crosshairs. So NAR says, tell you what, every MLS, you figure it out in your marketplace. So some MLSs will say, sure, you can have private listings. So if you want to see an EXP listing, you have to go to EXP. If you want to see a Remax listing, you have to go to them. They're not going to cross-pollinate on the MLS anymore. Unless the listing's not that good, then they'll post it on the MLS to get more exposure. Exactly how the commercial real estate market works. Because you don't get to see the good listings until they sit out there a long time. Then they post them to LoopNet. And then that's where you see all the dogs.
Yeah. They always say LoopNet is like the worst place to go look for a deal. Like it's where deals go to die, basically.
Exactly.
So maybe maybe Zillow or some of these other platforms that might be where listings go to die. If it's a bad listing, if it's not selling, maybe in the future, whatever that time frame is, 6 months, a year, 5 years. I think there are some sites that could, similar to commercial, end up like that.
Yeah. So that's where we're at right now. And the MLSs are each deciding what they're going to do. Our marketplace hasn't made a decision. We have coming soon status, but that coming soon status abides by the original clear cooperation. Like I can list my listing as coming soon, but if an agent in my office or if I have a buyer, I can't get them in there until it's available to everybody. Which is actually, in my opinion, that's the way it's more fair for the seller to expose it to as many people as you can do. But with the Realtor Association and realtors being attacked for the commissions, you're taking every incentive away from cooperating on the MLS because now we can't broadcast our commission, what we're going to share, because that's now a violation based on that lawsuit. So now the brokers are saying, well, why do we need to do that anyhow? We'll just in-house sell them. So now you fractured that MLS and all the brokers will just have their own silo of data. So the buyers would have to go to broker to broker to broker. Then there goes buyer representation. And sure, that might cut down the commission, but does it make it more transparent for the seller or buyer? No, I think it makes it worse. So it's funny how we ended up here. And I'm kind of interested to see where it goes. I think the consumer lost by that settlement and they don't know it yet. And I think the industry lost by that settlement and they don't know it yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think very few people won in this case, probably the attorneys, who
The attorneys won, that's it.
pay tons of money. And I think in certain cases, the investors won as well, because investors like yourself, like myself, we can go direct to a listing agent, if it's in, whether it's in your market, your state, or out of state. Like I buy stuff in South Carolina and other markets, but I can go direct to the agent now and say, hey, no fees,
Mhm.
I'm not taking anything. I want to make this quick, easy, painless for the seller. And maybe I can get a better deal out of that just because I'm able to negotiate, harder. But again, I'm a professional, so I know a little bit of what I'm doing on the investor side as well as
Yep.
on the agent side. And most people, consumers, they just don't have that experience. So they're really getting, hurt.
Right. But even if I say, hey, I'm going to represent myself, they say, oh, perfect. They don't have to give up that commission. Representation doesn't give you the right to pay out.
Right.
It's just you're negotiating the price is what it boils down to. They can still collect the 5, 6, 7% and not pay anything out. You have no idea if if they reduced it by that 2 or 3% to the seller or not, because they don't have to. That's not how the contracts are written.
Yeah, but at least for me in my experience, when I'm talking with these listing agents, let's say it's $100,000 house and they're charging 6%. So
Yeah.
they don't need
Yeah,
to.
you and I would know, right? I mean, we're going to be able to even if they collect the 2.7, as long as we get our price, we're fine. Yep. So it doesn't matter to us because we know what we're doing. But to, like you said, the homeowner, yeah, that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, it seems like you know the draw is just being sucked away, as far as power in the transaction from the buyer, from that consumer. Um, even dealing with builders and builders reps. I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were saying, how the builder's rep is trying to sell them on, working with them and being very exclusive. And in my mind, I'm like, hey, a buyer's agent can get paid either way from the builder. It's like my buyers wouldn't have to come out of pocket anything, but even the builders are trying to find ways to cut their commissions with other agents. So
Yeah. Yeah. I just did one recently with Lennar Homes. And then they say, okay, it's you get paid on the commission on the base price. We're going to pay out 2%, but we won't pay on any upgrades. So then they say, okay, this lot's an upgrade, and it's the excuse my language, shittiest lot in the whole subdivision. And the buyer's looking at the net sheet saying, why are they charging me 20 grand for an upgraded lot? This is the worst lot in the neighborhood. And I'm like, it's not in a lot of upgrade. They're just cutting the commission out. That's the way they're cutting the commission. They're being sneaky and clever about it, right? Everything's an upgrade. Oh, you want a toilet? That's an upgrade. So it's a way they're chipping away the commission. Yeah.
I took it from 2% down to maybe closer to 1.5%, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, as long as I can avoid it, I'm never going to sell another one of their houses unless the consumer absolutely wants it. But it's not worth the headache. And it was absolute brain damage to go through the transaction with them, you know?
It's always tough with some of those builders, especially a bigger track builder like Lennar, and kind of the reputation they built around the age. I'll just kind of leave it at that. But
Yeah.
so
So,
Craig, how do you feel like with everything coming out with Zillow, participating or not participating here with the whole clear cooperation policy? How do you feel like that's going to affect the way that brokers or brokerages look at that?
I don't think it matters to the broker, right? In this marketplace, and with the exception of some markets down in like Florida and Texas where you got a surplus of inventory, I think they're going to cave to MLS because they're going to need maximum exposure. But you get up in the Northeast and most other regions in this country, there's still a massive shortage of housing, right? So why not sleeve it, from the broker perspective? Now, most agents are pretty honest and fair dealing, and they're going to tell their clients that they want to give it maximum exposure, um, and put it on the MLS. And if Zillow and Redfin don't want to syndicate it, fine. It's still going to be syndicated to all the other IDX sites. It's still out there. Zillow, they're not providing any real value out there. Redfin certainly isn't. Um, so just because the listing doesn't appear on those sites doesn't give the seller less exposure. The exposure they need is to the other agents and other brokerages. The only thing that Zillow is providing is a way to capture buyers off the internet and sell their information to other agents. That's their business model. So they provide no service whatsoever other than just selling leads.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it will probably be more impactful on the agent side as far as, okay, this agent's with Coldwell Banker, and so Coldwell Banker has 300 agents and they're able to sell 60% of their listings in-house versus somebody who's with KW, same amount of agents, but they sell 30% in-house. And so maybe there's a pull on the recruiting side between brokerages for agents to say, hey, we're better, we sell more, more of our
Yeah.
listings in-house. But
And I think most agents know to cooperate and work with each other, right? 'Cause they know the buyer, there's a good chance that, the buyer is going to come from a different broker. So I don't think that clear cooperation is going to bust much. It may for a little while, but ultimately the market's going to shift like it is in Florida and stuff. And, I think the industry has been functioning at the most efficient level and will find its way back to there, even though all these rules and regulations were put into place to prevent it from running efficiently. Um,
yeah, how are you seeing things in your market, Craig? Is it slowing down? Is it still, you know, red hot as far as transactions go?
Sales are slower, but inventory is even lower, so it's still tough. I've got a list of properties I'm looking for, and nothing's coming up that meets the criteria. And so I've got buyers that are sitting on the sidelines. They've got a house to sell. They're locked in. They can't sell until they find the house. They're not going to sell the house because there's such shortage of inventory. They'll be homeless. It's a gridlock. And then rates kind of hold things down too. And yeah, we were starting to see a big pickup. We are seeing lots of multiple offers when rates were down around 6 to 6.5. And then they shot back up. I think today I just wrote down 6 and 7/8 with 1 point for owner occupant. And I think the national average is just under 7.
It's still tough to try to get a lot of people moving at those rates.
Yep.
I think I don't know if it was Zuber or somebody else I was listening to last week. They said, hey, if you're moving from a 6 to 6.5 rate, as far as houses, probably doesn't affect you that much. But if you're
Mhm.
maybe sub 4.5% up to 6.5, 7, so that's kind of painful.
Yeah, double your house payment for another bedroom.
Yeah. And restarts, your whole amortization clock, which, is something nobody really talks about. I mean, if you think about it, if you bought a house at 30 and now you're 38 and you're selling, well, that starts another 30 years if you're getting 30-year mortgage, from the time you're 38, not from the time you're 30, So if you're
Yeah.
looking at, hey, I want to be able to retire in X amount of years, some people forget that, factor that in as far as how retirement's going to look and keeping that payment going.
Yeah, I wonder if we should, we looked at that AI did that rental calculation for me. You bring up a good point that knocking down that the principal payment by resetting the amortization schedule and what that does to your overall performance. People refi, oh, I saved $200 or $300 a month, and not thinking that that money, going to principal, you might be getting ahead. And then the argument I've always brought that has been brought up to me when I argue with loan officers on that is, well, just take that and throw it against your principal, and then you're paying it down quicker. It's like, yeah, but nobody does. And I know better, and I still probably wouldn't be disciplined enough to do that. So I try never to refinance. But there you go. I have a bunch of debt equity then.
Well, it's funny. I just completed my first ever refinance on a on one of my rental properties, and I was kind of kicking myself for doing it, and then I was kind of kicking myself before I pulled the trigger for not doing it. So, you know,
Yeah.
it's almost like a lose lose. Although to be fair, I had a 8% rate, and I dropped it down to I think 7.25. Um,
Yeah. That makes sense.
Helps a little bit, and I pulled out decent sized check to go buy something
Oh,
else. As
that's
long
good.
I felt like I was doing two birds with one stone, dropping a rate. My payment goes up a little bit because I'm pulling out excess, equity, but dropping the rate and buying other stuff. So
Nice. Yeah. So then, what else did we have on the agenda? We were going to talk about rates and tariffs. The tariffs, I don't think is really going to make that big a hill of bean difference. I was just at a friend of mine's house before we, not house, but his business before I came over here, and he buys tool dies from China, right? He goes, okay, so it's 100% tariff. He goes, what does that do to my product? I said, I don't know, adds a buck a widget, and he's like, no, doesn't mean any difference. He goes, so I go from a $10,000 tool die to a $20,000 tool die, and he's gonna whatever crank out a million of these, so the actual impact to him is like nil, right? He goes, and it's still cheaper than having it made in the US. So he's got a point. So he thinks it's overblown.
I would probably agree with you. So the first aspect that I thought this would drastically impact my business is on the investment front. So I do some land home packages, which basically means I put a double wide mobile home on a lot, sell it as a permanent foundation house to a FHA type buyer. And I talked to my dealer, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the price just went up by $1,000 across all the product lines." I started freaking out for a second, and then I talked to another dealer of mine in another state, and he's like, "Oh, don't worry, that manufacturer does that same price increase every year. They've done that the last 5 years, so nothing to worry. Tariffs haven't affected anything for any other manufacturer." It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think once the jitters of all this kind of subside right now, it's all the YouTube channels, all the media, it's something to talk about and try to get viewership. And once this all settles down, I don't think it's going to matter a whole lot. Business will get back to normal. The rates, the 10-year Treasury has come back. What is it at today? Right now it's at 4.38. So then that brings that rate down to, I just said, what, 6 and 7/8. So, it's back to where it started a week ago before the tariff started. So we had a few days of freak out, and here we are.
Yeah. But the panic in the marketplace always, it does lead to opportunity, right? Maybe it's not opportunity for you or me, but it's opportunity for some investor or buyer out there to take advantage of a seller who's panicked, or whatever the case may be. So
Yeah. What's the market like where you're at?
Um, so we always do typically see a pickup in the springtime. Obviously more listings going on market, but more transactions right now. Um, there's there's a growing amount of inventory, not drastic, not like Florida, but it's growing. It's compared to what it has been the last couple of years. So we're seeing more housing, especially some entry level housing on the market. In fact, I actually just put a house on the market on Friday, and hasn't had a ton of activity. I mean, it's priced very well. It's priced in line with comps. Hasn't had the activity level I thought for an entry level house, just based on the location. But there are a couple other houses, in that price point in the general area that are also sitting for a little bit. So I don't know if it's, buyers are scared right now, or maybe they just, decided, hey, I really can't pull the trigger on an entry level house. You know,
Mhm.
student loans or the, overall rates. So I don't know. Most other price points are still doing fine. I mean, even that price point is still moving as well, but it'll be interesting to see how the activity on that property specifically is over the next 2 weeks to a month.
Yeah. Yeah, I showed duplex to a buyer, and they don't make sense to buy it as an investment anymore. They haven't for a long time. And he looked at me, he goes, "Is this going to sell for this?" And I said, "Yeah." Sure enough, the next day it was multiple offers. So it's like, okay, in this market, you probably, if you want rental property, probably stay shy of these duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. They just don't financially make sense here.
I absolutely. I mean, I think for a lot of rental property, 2 to 3 units, you're going to see that for a little bit. I mean, that's kind of been the case for multiple different markets, my market as well. Um,
Mhm.
you used to see a duplex, in the 180 to 200 range for the most part, and then they went up to about 250, and now they're sitting somewhere between 3 and 350. But if it's new construction, you could even hit 4. which is crazy because you're not getting the rent out of that for the price point.
Yeah, so it's about 250,000 per side, or 250 to 300,000 per side. Now, that's for like a two bedroom each side. In the same marketplace, you can go buy a townhouse, two bedroom, one bath, two bedroom, two bath for right around 190 to say 220.
Yeah, you got to buy the townhouse all day over that. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
even if you're getting the rental income to offset it, it's still just, it's not going to make sense.
Yep. And it's easier to unload too, right? You can go buy a slew of those and they're setting aside your monthly um, you know uh, association dues. Only 10% of that is going to management. The rest of it you're probably going to spend anyhow because you got to set aside capex. You got to pay for the insurance, you got to pay for whatever, the water, sewer, or you know whatever is in that association dues. you know um, so it's just a 10% management fee that you're out on the dues unless they do something stupid and vote in free cable TV or internet, which I had a complex do on me.
Yeah, thankfully we haven't had anything like that, but we have seen some fairly decent increases in our HOA, type dues.
But that's primarily insurance driven and building up the reserves for the capex, right?
And I was about to say that because from my conversations with them, they're almost like pre-planning for future capex, so they're building the capex up a little bit more than it was before. So yes, it hurts right now,
Hmm.
it's 10, $20 more a month on, for this one townhouse. But, considering they do take care of everything and they just replaced the roofs 2 years ago, it's like it's bound to happen.
Yep. Yep. So they're budgeting the way they should be, the way small operators should be operating, but we don't, right? Because it's just who we are, live on the edge.
So it's always like, oh, hey, I'm being, very reactive because, hey, there's this damage to the roof. Okay, got to shell out money for that, instead of being like, hey, let me properly budget and set aside my cash and my cash flow in these certain ways. So that
Yep.
is what I do appreciate about some of these townhome communities. They do a good job if they're managed well to, set some of that up.
Yep. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. I mean, we're kind of through the spring market and the sales, they're there, but it's still low. I was thinking we're gonna see things kind of launch loose the second half of the year. But my prediction was rates were gonna drop below 6, and I thought I was right last week, and then then it zigged instead of zagged, and here we are again.
Zuber's been talking about, this year being the last hard year for, agents, people in the real estate space. And, I don't know if it'll end right at the end of the year, if it'll take another year and a half, but I think it's going to take a minute to get back up to where we were, 21, coming into 22. There's just such a buildup and a frenzy. Um,
Yeah, that wasn't healthy. I don't want to see us go back to that level either. I'd like to see us kind of get back to that 2016 to 2019 range, kind of hum along where buyers got a chance to buy something. Sellers going to be able to sell something pretty easily if they got a good product and they're priced right. If they overprice, they're going to sit. That's a healthy market. But we've been bouncing between the two extremes for so many years.
yeah, and it's just going to take time to work it out. It's always the age old answer of time, but
Yeah.
you can't speed it up or slow it down. So just figuring out how to hang on for the ride and, do best by our clients.
Yeah. How are your consumers, or how do they think the market is? Are they in tune with all the innuendos that we're riding the highs and lows on, or are they kind of oblivious to what's happening?
I think for the most part, a lot of consumers are informed enough that they can understand some basic macroeconomics. But when you actually get into conversations, most of them don't, really fully understand ins and outs and how does this change in the, lawsuit with NAR affect how something happens over here, versus tariffs affecting, anything. So it's, it is fun on one hand. There's conversations, there's some education that goes along with it, but I think most of my consumers right now are at least informed enough that they're like, okay, we understand, kind of what's going on in the local real estate market. We're not going to be crazy on our sales prices. Sellers asking for too much. We're not going to come in and intentionally lowball people, unless it's an investor, and that's their MO. But um, yeah, I mean, for the most part, all of my consumers, all my clients are, you know, pretty pretty straightforward. Compared
Yeah.
to probably how it was last year, maybe a year and a half ago. Um, yeah, I have one client in particular. They're not really affected by rates or what's happening in the economy overall because they're coming into retirement. They have a lot of cash due to some liquidation events. So for them, they're probably one of the few that I have that a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world doesn't really matter as long as they can go get their house and what they're looking for. You know,
Mhm.
it's going to be a pretty open shut.
Yeah.
How are things looking with your clients?
I've got some sitting on the sideline, just kind of waiting. I'm not sure what they're waiting for. One of them think there's going to be this big wave of foreclosures. Well, foreclosures are way up. I'm like, no, let me put some information together for you. It's coming back to more of a normal.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah, they went up 20%, but it was at an all-time low, you know. So it's stuff like that. They get some bad information out there, and the housing bubble, unfortunately, that they're, the doomers, they have an impact. The rest of my clients, I can't find anything for them. They're stuck. It's just, the boomers would like to get out of their house and get into something else, but there's nothing that makes sense for them to buy. And I got first time home buyers that want to get in, and they can't find anything in their price point. That's just it's just tough. Then investors, we're having a tough time making numbers work with the higher rates because the prices haven't budged because there's a lack of sales out there to get new comps. And, you know, it's just, we're kind of locked in and the good stuff goes immediately with multiple offers. So,
I get it. Yeah, very similar to a degree. Although some of my clients I think have a little bit different, mindset than yours, particularly thinking about the foreclosure. Um, the one, so I had a conversation, somebody who wasn't my client, but they're just an investor who wants to buy foreclosures in my market. And the one thing I tried to explain to him is that, hey, you know, and 10, 15, 20 years ago, you didn't have people doing the whole subject to thing on a national level and raising a ton of interest in it to help people avoid foreclosure, take over their foreclosures, do all the crazy stuff with sub twos and foreclosures. So I
mm,
think you saw a lot more, 15 years ago than you are going to see today, or even 5 years into the future. Because there's tons of people. I mean, I've bought sub twos that way where somebody's, one payment behind, three payments behind, or no payments, but they're like, hey, next month I can't afford to make it. And so I, buy the property and it helps them avoid foreclosure and I pick up a rental. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. And, maybe your foreclosure investor finds something, but I think he's going to be, competing against a lot of different people that he doesn't know exist.
yeah, I think you're right. I think, the sub two is going to pick up some of them going into foreclosure. And then once they're in foreclosure, the bank's already got a list of investors they're going to, sell it off to, right? They know how to dispose of this stuff before it really has to sit there on the market and destroy the market. So we're not going to see those opportunities like we have in the past. There might be a few of them that make it through, but yeah, I wouldn't build my future on it.
Maybe you could pick up one or two solid rentals at a steep discount, but I think you're probably better off, making offers to people, that have had their properties on market for, 150 days plus,
Yeah,
and
I think the real opportunity is not those distressed sellers, but getting into like older generation. Like they've been in their house for 50 years, 60 years. The paint's peeling. They can't get the work done, right? They need to move on to their next place, assisted living or whatever it is, and or their kids are trying to dispose of the property, and they don't have the time or resources to fix it up, and you just go in there and you buy it, at your wholesale kind of deal, not taking advantage of them, but price it in for the work you have to do and make your margin and make the rents work and make them a clean, simple offer. And I think there's a big market segment that's ripe for that. And the people out there doing it, I hate to kind of stereotype a lot of the wholesalers, but it's kind of the Wild West. There's a reason states like yours are making laws against that kind of business practice, and there are very ethical ones doing it right. But there's a lot of cowboys out there that are just, you know, in it for themselves and putting people in bad situations. So, but I think if you go with it the right approach, you're going to help some people out and get some decent rental properties for yourself.
Yeah, you certainly will. I mean, that's actually what I did on my primary residence. Bought it from an older lady. She's in her late 80s, maybe early 90s, going into assisted living, and paid very fair price for it, but it needed a lot of cosmetics, and so we kind of priced it accordingly, and they took.
Mhm.
So works out, for us, and I think there's a lot of people that could, buy primaries, buy investments just like that.
Yeah. And as the population ages, I think that's kind of where the business I think has to go, right? That's the clientele that needs to be, have options on how to move to the next place. So I think it provides a good service if you can set up a good reputation and do it right.
I think so too. And I think if you can add in another wrinkle to that, offer, that business plan, which is a little bit of what I'm doing, but it's saying, hey, I can give you a cash price of, 250 for your house. But if you finance it to me, I'll pay 350 and I'll give you an income stream for the next, 10, 15 years. So obviously you're getting Social Security, but here's a, $1,500 a month payment that's on top of that. And
Mhm.
you want some, but this is helping to sustain your lifestyle, wherever you're moving. And I'm taking care of your house and your property, fixing it up. So that's also another good way for people to kind of incorporate, different offers into their, presentation to the seller.
Yeah. Because that might be more than they can make in a safe investment somewhere too. So
Yeah, it's all about just, trying to find, what is their motivation, and then can you help get them what they're looking for? And sometimes yes, a lot of times no. Just depends on the seller and their situation.
awesome. Well, good conversation. I think we're at our 5 o'clock stop hour.
Sounds great, Craig. Appreciate you talking with me, and we'll
Yeah, thanks for jumping on. This was fun. Maybe next time we'll get more participants.
absolutely we'll talk more next week.
All right, sounds good. Have a good night.